Good evening, everyone. On tonight's show, Mark's in bits, Lindsay's bumping into things, and I'm going to talk about going around and being nimble. Welcome to the Layover Live.
One life for the revolution. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up.
You almost got me then. I was almost late because you distracted me at the last second.
I've got the world's biggest cheesy Wotsits. What's those?
And they stick in your mouth, stick in your gob. They're not good.
That's it for the
They're
show.
not good if you're hosting any kind of internet TV.
Actually, you're very orange tonight. So we've all got corporate T-shirts on. You've got an orange drink. I notice you're not drinking tonight, and we'll talk about that later, Lindsay. But also orange Wotsits as well.
Yeah, it's all very corporate or Dutch or
It's
something.
weird because I've got Donald Trump on the show.
Yeah.
No, we haven't. No.
I listened back actually last week. I know there's terrible sound in here because we're still in the kitchen because we haven't quite gotten the other room sorted yet, but we will be there, I think, next week. We'll be back.
It'll be fine. It wasn't that bad, but we'll come on to the show later because I want to discuss what went on last week when I was otherwise engaged.
We missed you.
But Mark, first, let's talk about what's this about you being in bits?
No, it's not really about me. So there was a mid-air collision in the week, and the aeroplane landed with a big lump of it missing. And so I got onto aeroplanes that have come back with quite a lot of them missing.
Okay.
And there's some we've got some amazing images. I think that's a typhoon or a tempest, actually, I think it is. A tempest. Good.
Gee whiz.
But there is not a lot of structure there. And I just find it amazing that things hold together. And that's pretty extraordinary. What else? So that's AAA. That's basically fire, as is. So I think that's an A4. It says in the notes it's an F4. But I think that's a Skyhawk. I could be wrong.
Skyhawk, yeah. You can see the leading edge. I don't think the F4 had a leading edge like that, did it?
No, definitely didn't. But the presence of a man in the wing is definitely indicative of that wing not being in great shape. But it's amazing. It's a very resilient structure that's built for battle damage and strength, isn't it?
Talking about men in wings, that one's quite cool.
It's obviously quite fashionable. So that gentleman is Hugh Jackson, and he's a test pilot, which is why he's in an orange suit and got a NASA meatball on his arm, even though the aeroplane says Navy behind him. I think that was a fuel tank explosion. I mean, that's quite a lot. But probably the bestest one. Is it the next one, Scottie?
Oh, so, good Lord, yeah. Talking about wings, that one doesn't have a wing.
Yeah,
I actually thought it was photoshopped, actually, when I first saw this. I thought it was photoshopped.
Not at all. And I listened a long while ago, actually. I listened to an interview with the Israeli pilot. And he initially didn't realize that the entire wing had been blown off. And because had he would have just ejected, I think he said. But he realized that the wing was missing. So that's an F-15. The fuselage creates really quite a lot of lift, which is good. And he just sort of carried on and thought, well, it's all flying okay. But the bottom left picture there, the flaps are down and everything. It's incredible that all the services are still working. And I just find it amazing. I find it amazing that these machines can still work in that kind of circumstance.
I mean, I suppose that's fly-by-wire for you. It compensated for
F-15
not having anything on the right-hand side.
It is not fly-by-wire. The EX is.
Oh, really?
Saudi ones, yeah. So the latest one is, but that is not a fly-by-wire airplane. That is it's basically a P-51 with some rockets on the back. from a technology point of view, talking about 71 for the Eagle. Probably put, rolls right a bit in the tech log and then run away.
Well, that brings us right up to date with what happened this week. So
yes,
there's been loads on Twitter about it, loads on social media. So this happened near Denver. It was a collision between a Cirrus SR22 and a Metroliner. Now, that airspace around there is incredibly busy. It's a busy airport, multiple runways. And if you look, have you got the flight radar video, Scottie?
Yeah, I don't have the video. We've got this picture here of how they converged. Yeah, it didn't work out well for the Cirrus, did it? Really, looking at that.
Amazingly, nobody died.
Yeah, quite incredible.
Yeah, you see here's the flight radar piece just after they crashed, and the most incredible image that I saw, and I think Mark, you actually tweeted this image, was the Metroliner guy didn't actually realise that half his aeroplane was missing. He thought he'd had initially an engine failure, and this image here of him short finals, that aeroplane is bent.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not an we'll have an aerodynamics expert on later, but
yes,
that's not good.
Tails pushed down, so you can see that sort of, it appears to be a bit bendy. Also, Scott, your parcel's being delayed.
yeah. We're sorry that your Amazon parcel is not going to be with you today.
So the Cirrus pulled the cap system.
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, I didn't know that it was an option. I actually thought it was something on Cirrus that was standard, but apparently it's an option.
No, it is standard. It is absolutely.
Oh,
standard.
is it? Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Big red handle in between the two pilots, and you just pull it and float on down under this enormous parachute.
Yes. Yeah, quite amazing. And I've watched videos of the descent, and I've watched them sort of strolling around afterwards, unharmed, which is amazing. I think in different circumstances that would have been really quite. In almost any other circumstance, that's a fatal.
And I think it'd be really interesting to see when the report comes out, because there's so many sort of, I say moving parts, but there's so many different elements to this that have contributed in some way to it. Denver's high up. It's was it the Cirrus? Which one came in fast? The Cirrus.
The Cirrus doing 170 knots on base, which is
but you think Denver's what,
really
5,000 feet? So the density altitude's high. The actual speed it's going is going to be quick, and to come into base that fast, it's just there's all these little events that on their own probably wouldn't like any accident, and we'll talk about that more tonight.
We won't speculate. What we won't do is speculate.
I think it'll be really interesting to see all the sort of contributory factors that come up to it.
There's a few pundits giving their chat already, and actually some of it is very interesting, particularly in terms of how the traffic was advised and so on. Some really interesting human factors around that. But amazing.
Yeah, not speculating, obviously.
Doctor, you flew right over us this morning when we were in the park. Right.
Oh, really?
We noticed the breeze as you went over.
Oh yes, just because I was going a little bit. We were late. I was trying to get on the ground.
No, you were about. I guess you were about. I don't know, 1,000 feet, something like that. So it was terribly nice to see you. But what's all that you didn't go around? So what was all this about going around?
Actually, this has been widely reported this week as well. I don't know if you've seen it. The FAA are investigating a near miss collision between a Delta A330 jumbo jet. Lindsay. This is Sam Sweeney. He's CBS's aviation correspondent. So his recognition in A330 jumbo jets isn't great. Essentially, and Lindsay, you've been to San Diego. I've been to San Diego. As we know in the States, the A330 was on the runway, getting ready to depart. It had a small tech snag, which meant it was on the runway for a little bit longer than it wanted to be. The Embraer came down to 200 feet, and actually just before 200 feet, the team in the tower said, "Look, can you go around, please? Because the other aircraft is still on the runway." So guess what? They did a normal go around, vector background, and landed normally, and quite rightly so. An open reporting culture. The air traffic control said, "You know what? If we hadn't have told him to go around, he would have probably done it himself. But you know, we'll just put a little report in because that's what we do. You know, it's just culture. We report everything, don't we? And the fact that people are actually, you know, making a big thing of it, and actually, will that? I'm trying to think. Will that discourage people from reporting stuff in the future?
Probably
I
not.
don't know. I don't think it will. But there's a lot of negative press around it. It was actually headline news in the States on Friday and Saturday. Yeah, headline news. Yeah, that you know, this airplane did a go round.
Anyway.
Queen of the Skies coming over the very famous car park at the end of San Diego runway. Yeah,
Andre higher up than the jumbo, or is that?
You know, it might be perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-story, isn't it? It's a shame, isn't it? Those sorts of stories, because I think they tracked, and you think, well, that's just eyeballs and clicks that they're getting. I think on the. Anyway, there we go. Enough of me grumbling.
I had to go around at Heathrow once because there was a fox on the runway. Probably not the issue with the fox, but the ops vehicle trying to scare the fox that was on the runway. We got sent around sort of, you know, 200 feet. Yeah.
Bloody hell. I don't think I've ever gone round at Heathrow.
You know, that's because you don't work. Scottie.
I don't work hard enough. That's probably why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So talking about work.
Yeah.
I've been doing some work reviewing last week's show.
Yes.
Now, there was some editing that was supposed to happen that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And this was left in.
Cool.
I actually think these shows are better without Scott.
We'll edit that bit out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, would you like to comment on the bit that wasn't edited out?
But you did say afterwards it's definitely better without Scott.
No, that's what you said.
Oh, well, I don't know. Anyway, no, Scott, miss you, and actually some other people who've obviously now we've blocked also missed you.
Scott, you can get your own back next week.
Oh yeah, I can, yeah, because you're trusting me and Mark next week to press the buttons on our own.
No, so you guys can have all the banter you want next week, and I'll just have to suffer it the week after.
I think, look, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
It is going to be great next week. There will be no mistakes whatsoever because we'll have to have about 5 run-throughs to make sure it all works. I know you don't like extra bits, but before we go on to the next segment, I've got to lower the tone because you know I always lower the tone on this. Now, I was doing some shopping.
Yeah.
Doing some shopping, looking around for Layover HQ, and I found a sofa that I thought Mark would like. Lindsay, do you think this sofa would fit in the new office?
That is horrific.
Take it down.
This sofa was actually in a shop in Chicago yesterday. I could not believe it when I walked past that.
You saw that with your own eyes. That isn't the result of something.
No. I actually took that photo yesterday. That was it was taken through the window. I didn't actually go in the shop to take the photo, but that was actually in a shop in Chicago yesterday.
In 2021, that is an item that is for sale.
That's fucking. I know. We're definitely not. We're not having it in the office. I can tell you that.
That is just disturbing.
Right, I can leave you two alone next week.
No, you probably can't. You probably can't.
Those of you tuning in expecting an aviation-based show, welcome to Furniture You Can Buy.
Or not, as the case may be. So enough of us droning on. Actually, this reminds me, Mark, you sent me a video earlier this week, which was awesome. It was having a bit of an identity crisis, though, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah. But it's quite cool nonetheless. Because should
we watch it?
Yeah.
Let's stick it on and we can talk about it later. I think that's quite cool.
Don't tell Sharky Ward, there's a sort of Royal Air Force voiceover over a Royal Navy Harrier. Poor gentleman will totally lose it. But I watched that 3 times before I realised it was actually shot by a drone of a real aeroplane. It just looked like kind of computer graphics to me, but
I feel like
it's really
yourself, Scott, because I was going to say to people, remember to subscribe to the show, and then you put the sofa up. But actually, after that Harrier, I think we can legitimately ask people to subscribe.
Yeah, if you are watching and you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. There'll be a thing somewhere over there to do that. And for the YouTube algorithm nonsense, if you are watching on YouTube, if you could press the thumbs up if you think we're doing all right, that would also be lovely.
Yeah. Preferably before you've seen Scott's sofa.
Right, should we move on?
Let's move on.
Why not? Well, this evening we've got some guests. Not one, but 2. Both of them are lecturers at Cranfield University and have some of the best job titles I think we've ever had on this show. Director Space was pretty good. But firstly, Professor Graham Braithwaite, who is Director of Transport Systems and Professor of Safety and Accident Investigation. I can't even say it. And then we've also got Professor Nick Lawson, who is a Professor in Aerodynamics and Airborne Measurement. And Nick, as well as doing that, is a pilot on the National Flying Laboratory. Perhaps Nick can later confirm my airborne measurements are in fact nimble, Lindsay, bearing in mind the comments you made last week. Both of these academics are AvGeeks at heart, and Graham, as many of you will know, watches the show and regularly comments. Globally renowned experts in their field, and we're very privileged to have them both with us this evening. Without further ado, welcome, professors. How are you?
Good, very good, thank you.
Hi, evening.
It's wonderful to have you.
We've got a new sofa for you for the entrance to Cranfield Uni. If it's surplus. If we don't want it, if you need it, there's always room for the sofa.
Should have gone to DFS. No good.
We're gonna come on to the big makeover that Cranfield's had during lockdown, but yeah, I think we can safely say we've got no need to ship it back.
No return, no sale.
Right, gents. So I'm gonna kick off tonight, if that's okay. And normally, the first question that we ask our guests is, how did you get into aviation, and what was your unique pathway in? But I kind of feel like your journey into the aviation sphere is going to be maybe slightly different from some of the other guests that we've had on the show. So, Graham, I'm going to start with you. And if you could tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into your current position at Cranfield.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I actually came from a railway geek family. So both grandfathers worked in the railways. Dad was a vicar, very close connection to railways, if you've ever worked out who wrote Thomas the Tank Engine. And so I did a degree in transport at Loughborough University. And during that time, I realised that aeroplanes were much cooler than trains most of the time. And apologies to the person who I know watches every week who's from the railways. But I went to university just down the road from where the Kegworth air crash happened. And I started to meet people who'd been first responders, fire service and the police and so on. And it was the start of an interest in aviation safety. And everything from then has been definitely never wanting to stay at university. And yet you know, 20 odd years later, I'm still in the university, but loving it.
Okay, and for Nick, so you're a pilot as well as a sort of academic. So
Yeah.
how did those sort of two pathways interlink with each other?
Well, I suppose some of this comes back to inspiration or what got your initial interest. I mean, I suppose going all the way back, my dad was in the RAF, and he always had a keen interest in aircraft, and we did the air show stuff when I was quite young. And I lived a bit of an expat life, so we used to come back on large aeroplanes from Africa to the UK reasonably frequently. And I do remember a bit of probably a big moment was walking up, my dad taking me to the front of a 707 and looking in the cockpit. I probably was about 4 or 5 when he did that. And I must have stuck. I just thought, God, look at this, you know, who can't like this? And then, I mean, through various circumstances, I got into an engineering degree at Loughborough. So me and Graham are Loughboroughrites. I suppose, again, my dad had an influence. He steered me to engineering because I liked physics and maths at school. But I always wanted to fly, but it was almost, I couldn't do the RAF thing because my eyesight wasn't good enough. And then the engineering thing was nice and safe. And then when I got to Cranfield to start a lectureship, my first bit at Cranfield was lecturing missile propulsion and aerodynamics at Shrivenham. And then I moved over to the main Cranfield site everyone knows with the airfield. And my office overlooked the airfield. And I saw these guys at Cab Air. I know, Lindsay, you were at Cab Air, thinking, how can they be doing this? I'm in my office. So I got a trial lesson. With, I think it was even with Cab Air. It was one of the flying schools. Got the controls, thought, this is for me. And then from that point on, I did, in my own time, I did my PPL, I did my CPLs, and then it led into an opportunity to fly for the university. So it kind of, I always wanted to do it. And my engineering pedigree or degree was urging me on. It was always there. It's just the timing, really. So I learned late. I learned to fly in my late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. But I love it.
Wow. Graham, your academic journey is fascinating, but did you ever really consider stretching yourself and your abilities and becoming a qualified pilot like Nick?
It's a great question. So look, when I decided this is what I want to do, I want to work in aviation safety, my supervisor said to me, you've got 2 choices, go away and be a pilot for 20 years or do a research degree. And I'll be honest, the world is a safer place without me as a professional pilot. So I took the research degree route. And I did some flying out in Australia, which was superb. And I've done some flying with Nick, and I can only attest what a patient and courageous man Nick is.
You're kind.
I learned a lot. And one thing that will absolutely stick in my mind is approaching Bankstown Airport in Sydney. If anybody knows Bankstown, big GA airport. And I was with our chief instructor, and I thought I was doing a really good job as we were approaching. And he's doing the whole left a bit, left a bit, left a bit. I think, no, I have absolutely nailed this. I'm utterly on the centre line. Oh, that runway. Because Bankstown's got 3. And it seems that they're funny about which one you actually land on. So, you learn.
Sticklers, eh?
If the lesson isn't going well, it's at least 50% the instructor isn't briefing it right. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So after that,
you've got 3 choices. I mean, it's even safer, isn't it? You've got 3 places to land, not 1.
Exactly. And Nick, before we move on to talking about the university, what sort of balance of your time is spent flying aeroplanes, and what is how are your days split up, I guess?
Well, it's kind of, it changes week by week, but I'd say probably on balance, I'm doing aircraft stuff 1 to 2 days a week over the year. I've got the delightful position of being able to do light aircraft or our larger aircraft, the Jetstream. So I love both. I'm a qualified instructor as well, so I fly the students, which is really great because it's an absolutely brilliant learning tool and learning experience for them to fly in both aircraft, the light aircraft and the larger aircraft we've got. So yeah, it's about 1 to 2 days a week.
This will drive Scott crazy because I'm going to go slightly off script, right? So this is just.
It's fine.
But
Yeah.
do you take some of the sort of lecture material and then kind of relate that directly to the flight? So there's an obvious linkage, or are the two jobs almost separate?
Oh, there is a linkage, definitely, because if you're teaching aerodynamics, for example, a stall, you can talk about stall all day in the lecture, but you get them in an aircraft and stall it and go into a buffet in a stall, and it just bang, it hits home. So this is what the consequences are. So you need both. You definitely need both. But when you put both together, it's brilliant. It works really well for the students.
Brilliant. Yeah, I guess, as you say, that's the ultimate practical, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I mean, the NFLC, they talk about experiential learning. It's the kind of feeling, the seeing, the feeling, and linking it all together. That's why it works really well when you've got both. It's much better. Yeah.
We're going to come on to how the site looks as well, because I think it's important for us to be able to visualize. But Graham, we're going to move on to sort of the university. We know that it's unique. Well, I've already just heard about Shrivenham, which I shamefully didn't really know the connection existed.
Shrivenham. Oh yeah, they're the defence side. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably can't talk about them, but it's got you've got your own airfield, Graham. You've got your own maintenance organisation. You've got your own air traffic control, and there's a history to Cranfield as well. So for our viewers,
yeah. So 75 years ago, the government realised just how much had been learned through the Second World War around aviation. I wanted to make sure we captured that. So they took kind of the best aeronautics professor from Oxford and the best one from Cambridge and got them together to imagine what kind of higher education institution might be formed. And they said it absolutely has to have its own airport because everything has to be practically based. So if you want to work out where we are on a map, we're exactly halfway between Oxford and Cambridge, about 50 miles north of London. And we were built on what was RAF Cranfield. And everything in the university. And we do a lot of diverse stuff now. We have a really great school of management. We do some very cool stuff around environment, around agri-food and so on. But it all grew out of that College of Aeronautics. So we're 75 years young this year.
And the aviation side of it, as you say, has always been kind of part of it, hasn't it? I watched a video of doves and Ansons and all sorts of wonderful kinds of things, and it looks like you've kind of migrated your airplanes up to the modern equivalent of those. So that obviously that size of aircraft kind of works for teaching and demonstrating everything that you need to demonstrate. So I think we're going to come on to the tower in a moment, but the typical kind of course that you teach, what's the sort of the main product, the VW Golf of a Cranfield product?
So we only do postgraduate degrees, so master's degrees and doctorates, and then we do quite a lot of short courses for industry. So people who are in the job, and we always say, they were doing the job on Friday, they come to you on the Monday, and they go back to the job the following Monday. So you've got to give them something that they can use straight away. So that's quite an important hallmark of what we do. I think the stat is that we generate more aerospace postgraduates from Cranfield than the rest of the UK university sector put together. So there's a big set of graduates there, some doing vehicle design, some doing air transport management, some people doing safety, airworthiness, things like that. So there's a whole raft of things. But every year we get this stunning array of incredibly bright students. We reckon there's never fewer than 100 nationalities on campus at any one time. So it really does feel like a global aviation community. And wow, they're clever. Every time I teach, I learn something, and it's a real privilege. You're not dragging people to learn. They are, you're trying to keep on to their coattails as they accelerate into the distance. We have some amazing students.
Absolutely agreed with that. Yeah, I mean the Cranfield course. What Cranfield is known a lot about, and when you ask students when they come, as Graham alluded, it facilities. They really like the fact there's all the facilities there. I mean, in the aerodynamics area, we've got 9 wind tunnels, and the wind tunnels run from Mach. There's a big wind tunnel where you can generate an atmospheric boundary layer to do all sorts of different tests. And that's kind of 8 foot by 4 foot. And then we've got that's quite low speed. We've got up to Mach 7, I think. Yeah, there's a gun tunnel. So we can go all that range, and all those facilities are in one building. And there's no other place like that with all of those wind tunnels in one building. So it's quite unique. Yeah.
I'll pop a comment here. So it looks like you also serve other unis with your facilities. Is that right?
Yeah, we do. We're currently flying. It goes up and down a little bit, but we're flying typically 24 UK universities, including Cranfield, and they do some of the flying courses as part of their accreditation. So to become a professional engineer, to get chartership, you need to have done an accredited course, and part of the accreditation is some of the type of activity we do at Cranfield. It gives them the evidence that they've met the accreditation criteria, which is why they fly in our aircraft.
Oh, brilliant! It sounds amazing, and I've never visited. I must do it. But if you were to pick the coolest thing, so question to both of you now, Graham first, if you wouldn't mind. If you were to pick the coolest thing that you think the university is currently researching or developing, the stuff you can tell us about, what would it be?
That's really hard, isn't it? So the UK government have sponsored a competition called Future Flight, which is about generating what aviation might look like in terms of alternative propulsion or in terms of drone flying and so on. And Cranfield's involved in, I think it's 11 different projects around that. So everything from reforming aerospace through to some really cool stuff with urban air mobility and so on. So I think it's the breadth of projects that's really exciting. We're doing some very cool stuff in digital aviation, the full breadth of that. And there's some really neat stuff around alternative fuels, from sustainable aviation fuels through to hydrogen. So there's no one answer to that. It's that there's this focus on what aviation can become, not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of our environmental impact. I think it's quite exciting that we're doing the both. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it all links together. Some of the areas that Graham's talked about. Some of the areas I work in is trying to predict the flow fields around aircraft, and of course, if you're starting to look at quite complex things like integrated propulsion, where the things aren't just hung out the wings like they have been done the last 40 or 50 years. You want to integrate everything a lot more. The aerodynamics gets quite critical, quite complex, and so some of the areas I work in, we're getting to the point we can predict the aerodynamics under all sorts of different conditions. We've got 2 supercomputers at Cranfield, which we can run very, very large models, detailed models on aircraft, and then we can link that to the wind tunnel. We can also link some of that to the aircraft. So that kind of linkage with integrated other areas of university. And the integration of everything, that's a really good way to go, and I like that.
I'm going to go off script again.
Yeah, go on.
I know only because it triggers Scott. Really, he just hates it. But is there something out there that you think that a product that's sort of working and in the environment that's a Cranfield thing? Is there something where the university has had a real influence? Could be a long time ago, I don't know. Or a person. Could be a person.
Yeah. Go on, Graham. You can go first if you want.
You go first.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back in time as well, even you're looking at things like fly-by-wire, quite a few of the alumni in the past have worked through Cranfield from the College of Aeronautics times up to even the 80s and later. Have had influences on areas like fly-by-wire or and certainly if you look to the future there's going to certainly be some influence on the integrated technology, the hydrogen technology, the sustainable aviation fuels. So I'm sure, you know, if you look in our alumni list, there are thousands of people in significant companies and countries all over the world, and that to me is the impact of coming to us, I think. Graham, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention Ralph Hooper, who's one of our graduates, who's generally referred to as co-creator of the Harrier jump jet. That would be a pretty cool thing. There's an equivalent in terms of, I think it's the F117 and so on. You know, that there's people like that who've just gone on to completely change the world. It's quite humbling, really.
But you get amazing how these alumni pop up everywhere. I gave a lecture last year about aircraft spinning, and I'm getting into modeling spinning aircraft, both steady state dynamic spinning. And so I gave this lecture, and then this guy piped up afterwards and said, "Oh, you know, I'm Colin Martin. I was naive enough not to have heard of him. And just get in touch with me. I've done a bit of work on spinning." So when I finally got in touch with him, he was I think he was very high up in DSTO in Australia. And then he sent me some papers, and some of his work was done at Cranfield, some of it was done when he left Cranfield. But he was a top guy in the world. He had predicted it ages ago, and I was, trying to do it. And you just, people pop up like that. It's remarkable that way.
Yeah. So that's really interesting to hear the kind of reach. If we sort of dive into one of the current projects, I think this is fascinating, because I think we've just seen London City kind of go this way. The virtual tower.
Ah, yes.
Cranfield. I don't know who's going to talk first. I'm trying to coordinate you two. So is it right that Cranfield was the first airport in the UK to be controlled virtually? So I guess let's start with the principle first of all, and then move on to the sort of mechanics of it all.
Graham, if you want to comment,
So December 2018, it went live as an approved facility. And it's been done in partnership with Saab. Saab are a really important strategic partner. Put the technology in for us. There's the little tower. The tower went up in about 3 days, which is remarkable, and took a little bit longer to get everything else in place and regulatory approval and so on. But it was transformational. You know, we went from a drafty old tower that was about to fall down to this state-of-the-art facility. And we did some of the work to look at human factors integration. It's quite interesting. There's some research we do around multiple remote towers, so how you can control more than one airport using the same digital tower. But actually, when you go in, the visibility for the air traffickers is incredible. They can see more than they could see in the visual tower, because there isn't a building behind this one. It's a 360 view. It joins up, so you can see something taxi around the back. And if you picked up a pair of binoculars and looked at the screen, you don't just see pixels, you actually see a magnified view. The quality is that good. The only scary thing that happens is if a bird flies too close to the tower, it looks massive. So we think there were a couple of insects that moved in, and this thing came like a pterodactyl.
Like a spider on the lens.
Yeah.
Is this actually completely? We're seeing a 180 sort of view there. If they spin the chairs round, is it behind them as well?
So there's 15 screens. There's a spare one in case one fails. And actually, when you get around here, you are getting I think it's a 370 degree view. So you get the overlap. So if something disappears on this side of the screen, it reappears over this side. So you get that full 360 view. And then it very neatly deals with, if the sun's in the way, then it changes the tone of that screen, so that you don't get blinded. You can layer on certain things. You just about see the pink lines there that show you.
But it's not all the way around, Scotty. It's about 180 or 170 degrees.
Okay.
So it's kind of a compressed 360. Yeah. So
and on the sort of visual part of the screen, is there data attached to the airplanes, or is it literally just a visual picture?
So it depends how much you pay. There's lots of extra toys that you can add to it, and obviously the research is going as fast as it can, because actually what would be really interesting is for it to be able to connect in. We have a drone scanning radar made by a company called Aviation, and it can start to tell you things about drones that you just wouldn't ever be able to find in a normal tower. But if you had a drone that was hiding behind a flock of birds, then conceivably that's the sort of thing that it can start to tell you in the future. So it's very much, it's an operating tower, operated all the way through lockdown, which was incredible. But as a research area, that whole digital tower field is just going really fast. There's some amazing stuff.
And so I guess, and you're going to have to forgive my rather kind of narrow, dumb kind of view on this, that the immediate obvious application here is potentially that a remote airfield in the middle of absolutely nowhere that wouldn't normally have air traffic control and therefore couldn't necessarily support commercial operations or something like that, can now have that remotely from somewhere else.
That's a perfect opportunity. It was actually a cheaper way of replacing a visual tower, believe it or not, than the bricks and mortar of building a tower. So, it was cost effective in that sense. And there's the added resilience that if you have more than one digital tower able to control an airport, then you lose your tower, you fire it up in London City or wherever, and now you've got some alternative provisions. So.
I'm going to. Sorry, go on, Nick.
Yeah, I was saying that, and the yellow jacket police love it because you can zoom in so much. If you're standing and you think you're hiding behind something, suddenly they can. One of the controllers, Sophie, showed me once, and I said, "Well, can you zoom in a bit?" "Oh, yeah, I can zoom in." And there was a speck in the distance, and zoom. There's a person standing there, so there's no hiding. It's pretty good. It's pretty impressive.
Does it record?
Yeah, it records. Yeah. Definitely.
Which I guess when we get onto the slightly kind of terrifying world of accident investigation, I guess is a source of data that doesn't normally exist.
Yeah, and in fact, we captured our first accident on it a few months back. Thankfully, it was not a fatal, but the whole thing is recorded. You can see it. You can see how close things came. But yeah, to get that level of fidelity, with obviously linked to the audio and so on, is an incredible tool for investigators as well.
Wow.
And Graham, can I I'm going to break my own rule and go back a bit, actually, if you don't mind. Can I actually go back to the tower itself? Now, this is the tower now. So this is what's replaced Heathrow's tower. What's actually at the top there? What is it? Is it just an array of cameras, like a couple of GoPro-esque 4 cameras, or is it more complex than that?
It's a number of cameras, but there's a lot of redundancy built into it, and has an ability to clean its lenses and so on. So, that's part of the approval, is to make sure that this is a system with multiple redundant systems on it. But yeah, this is all visual based. I mentioned the Aviation radar. That's on top of. That's not part of our day-to-day provision. That's a research capability. But this is a visual tower. Yeah.
And I think Scottie, they have air jets to protect to keep them clean. Every camera's got an air jet around it on the outside window, and then it's all stabilized. So if a tower's wobbling a bit in a strong wind, it's all stabilized as well, gyro stabilized. It's pretty natty.
So cool. That is cool. Nick.
I would normally go to the tower to pay a landing fee. I won't know where to go now.
It just scans your credit card as you fly past. It's folded up.
Yeah, it's Apple Pay now. Yeah, moved on. Nick, alongside being a professor in aerodynamics and airborne measurement, you're a pilot on the National Flying Laboratory. We talked about that earlier. It's currently a Jetstream 31.
Correct.
But big changes afoot, I believe. So what I'd like to do is allow Graham to tell us about it, but not the Graham here. It's another Graham. So a short video from a Graham who's made an effort for tonight.
I'm Professor Graham Braithwaite. I'm the Director of Transport Systems, and I'm really excited that we've won the Queen's Anniversary Prize for the work of our National Flying Laboratory. I think one of the things that students experience on the aircraft that you just cannot in a simulator is the physical sensation of flight. And some of the flight regimes we're able to explore in the aircraft are rather different to what people might find if they go flying on their holidays. So on occasion that means filling the sick bag, but for many they remember exactly what Dutch roll or some other manoeuvre feels like for many years. I think it's a massive achievement for Cranfield to win the Queen's Anniversary Prize for the 6th time. There's so few universities who've done it, and we're a small university compared to many, but I think it's a fabulous reflection of the impacts that we make and that the recognition in which we're held. So it's a massive, massive achievement for us all. I'm really excited about the fact that this represents a team effort. This is such an asset for Cranfield, but it only works because of all the people that are involved in preparing the aircraft, in dealing with the students, in flying the aircraft and running the research. So the Queen's Anniversary Prize is such a fabulous celebration of a team effort. So this is a really exciting time for the National Flying Laboratory. In fact, just last week we took ownership of an aircraft that will be converted to replace this one. So it's a larger, it's a more efficient aircraft, and it will allow us to do more research and fly more students. And that aircraft will be converted over the next year and hopefully arrive in time for the launch of our new Digital Aviation Research and Technology Centre, which will provide an experimental airport terminal, and all of the students from the universities that fly on this aircraft will be part of research done in that building. So it couldn't be a more exciting time for us.
Firstly, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
The sixth time. I've actually, Graham, I've actually got a picture of you here with His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales. You receiving? Is it a scroll or is it what do you actually get? Is it? It's that behind you.
And you get one of these, which is rather nice.
Oh,
Very nice.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just here for safekeeping.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's very insured.
It's fantastic.
So Nick, it's going to get some Scandinavian flair with your new Saab.
Yeah.
Tell us what is this transformation going to do for the laboratory?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the capacity is going up at least 50%. But over the last 10 years or more, I've been in the National Flying Lab now 15 years, so it's probably longer. The student numbers have gone up and up that we're trying to fly every year, and that clearly puts an operational pressure on us. But this new aircraft will give us typically 24, 25 seats per flight instead of about 16, and that's a big help as well for the operation. It's not too much bigger than the Jetstream, so it should fly similar, it should handle similar, and it's a little bit faster. So it's not a massive leap in our operation because we don't plan to do significantly different things with the aircraft, but we'll be able to fly more students and meet all of the demand that we get for it. So that's a big thing for us.
And Nick, is this the only aircraft at the university own, or are there other ones as well?
So we've got two light aircraft. We've got a Bulldog and a Slingsby. We like to have aerobatic aircraft because part of the experiential learning experience for students is to do certain manoeuvres, and so we like to have aerobatic capable aircraft, and we've always had aerobatic capable aircraft. So all of our instructors are aerobatic rated, and we kind of combine some of that experience with other parts of our curriculum, whether it's a space engineering student. You could show them, for example, 0G in an aerobatic aircraft without any problem. Students don't appreciate negative G. If you turn them upside down and fly, well, the wing works upside down. Okay, yeah, well, because we're sitting upside down. Look, the horizon's the wrong way up. So there's things you can do with aerobatic aircraft which you can't with normal aircraft. So the bigger aircraft, the Saab and the Jetstream will be retired soon. They allow us to do the kind of workhorse lab flying, giving these large number of students the experience. And then the students that come to Cranfield get that, but they also get the chance to go in our aerobatic aircraft as well when they come to Cranfield. So yeah, it's kind of split between the two. I fly them all. I love them. I mean, I think the Bulldog is a little bit of a favourite because I used to fly the Pup. I learned to fly on a Beagle Pup, which was the most underpowered aeroplane ever, but it was beautifully light. Once you spent about half an hour getting up to 5,000 feet, and then you did some aerobatics, it was absolutely beautiful handling for the aerobatics. It just had a little bit. It could have done with a little bit more power. It was a Pup 100. So when I got in the Bulldog, it felt a little bit like the Pup. I felt like home. But I do like the Slingsby as well. It's nice. It's a little brutal, quite powerful, but it's nice.
Graham, you said in your video there the aeroplane's going to be modified. What sort of or it might be a better question for Nick, but what kind of modifications are applied to the aeroplane? Is it something incredibly fancy, or? Do
you want me to say something, Graham? Or?
Yeah, because I'm just gutted you took the galley out. So you know you.
No galley. Oh my God.
Scott's not.
Yeah,
that's it. I'm not coming.
We're not serving G&Ts on the Saab. The thing is, you need, for basic demonstrations in flight, to get the type of parameters that we're after. You need a very high spec inertial unit. You need additional vanes on the aircraft to get side slip angle. This actual mod as well is going to include a SATCOM system in conjunction with a couple of Dartec partners. Graham can maybe talk about that in a minute. But there's we've probably got up to, I think, nearly 100 parameters coming off the aircraft into a central rack, and we can then Wi-Fi that around the cabin for either industrial customers or for the students on the tablets. They're going to have tablets, so they can get live displays of all these different parameters depending on what we're trying to demonstrate. So it will look like a normal Saab inside, but it's not. It's going to have a lot of parameters getting fired through the Wi-Fi to whoever wants them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Graham, do you want to talk about the classroom element?
So we've had amazing support from various industrial partners, from charitable trusts, and from the various universities that fly on the aeroplane. So the capability we've added should allow us to take the feed from various cameras on the aircraft, including in the flight deck, plus all of the data and the audio from our demonstrator, who's the engineer at the back telling everybody what's about to happen. And through a AV suite on campus, amazing guys who run that studio, we should be able to distribute that live to those people who can't fly on the aeroplane. So, for schools outreach and so on, they should be able to get live broadcast from the air. And actually, once the aircraft is up and running, why don't we do one of these live in flight? You'd be very welcome to do that. That would be good. That
would be awesome.
In a bag live, but we'd love to do that.
Is that the global classroom, isn't it, Graham? They're calling
global
it
connected classroom.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Let's get it in the diary. Graham, you mentioned in your video the Digital Aviation Research Centre, this new terminal, and I think I've got a couple of pictures of it. I think it's this fantastic building here. I hope
it is. That's it.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about this building and what this building is going to offer Cranfield and the students?
Absolutely. So Research England, which is one of the UK government funding agencies, basically try and build world-class research facilities by getting you to work with industry partners to build something new. We have one of these research centres with Rolls-Royce and Airbus about aerospace integration, and this one is focused on digital aviation. So again, lots of partners ranging from Heathrow Airport, Etihad are a partner, Thales, Saab are a couple of the other big partners, and it's all focused on everything from passenger experience. So the building you can see includes a nice slice of airport terminal. In there you can do facial recognition for clearing people through borders and so on. And then underneath that hangar roof, we have a 737. The eagle-eyed ones would spot that as a former British Airways aircraft. British Airways very generously donated that a few years ago for us to use for research and teaching. But that hangar roof has also got sensors as part of future maintenance, repair and overhaul work. So, if you want to know whether this aircraft has got a panel missing before it's detached or dispatched from maintenance, then there's some of the sensors that we can use. Boeing are a partner. They've got a line station in a box that they've brought along to support the aircraft as well. But when the students come to fly in the Saab, then they'll go through that airport experience. So they'll get to be part of the research, and then they'll go on board the aircraft just off to the side of that building. And it was finished a couple of months ago. We had to build it through lockdown. There was a slightly worrying few months where all the building materials went off to make hospitals, quite rightly. So the project was delayed somewhat, but it just looks stunning. It's a breathtaking building, and the architect who put it together is a hero.
It just looks amazing. It just looks absolutely fantastic, and I think it's so refreshing to hear. So, in fact, someone posted on here saying, well done, UK government, because it seems that there is a lot of support from government, and we tend to hear such negative stories about our own government, don't we?
Yeah, and
fabulous.
You're right, and there's been a lot of investment in facilities like that. It's not just for Cranfield. This is a UK facility. It's working with lots of the players across the aviation industry, and universities work with universities. We're not all rivals. It's something that the UK should be really proud of.
Yeah.
So, Graham, I'd like to move on a little bit to air crash investigation. Now, this air crash investigation is a regular show that we watch in our household. I say we.
Me too.
Mark's super keen on it. So, in your professional opinion, as a professor of safety and accident investigation, when we watch these shows and you see the AIB and NTSB crawling over the crime scene and trying to get to the root cause, how similar is it to that in real life, or is it totally on a different scale?
It's a great question, because there's lots of shows made like this, and some of it you think that's not really how it's like. But actually, the ones on National Geographic, the air crash investigator, they're pretty good, and it's always good fun to watch when they have somebody or even better, an actor playing somebody and you go, they're not like that in real life. But look, they work really hard to try and deliver at least the kind of forensic end of investigation, the tin kicking, if you will, and probably the only bit that they don't get into in depth is the changes that come about as a result of it. And I had the experience a few years ago. I was flying to run a course with a guy called Dave King. Dave King used to be the chief accident investigator in the UK, 38 years at the Air Accident Investigation branch. And we were sat in the exit row of a British Airways aeroplane, and before we took off, we got briefed on what to do in an emergency. Were we willing to be a helper to open the overwing? All this wonderful. It was really well done. And Dave sat there saying, the problem as an accident investigator is when you retire, you have no sense of whether you actually made a difference, because you can't prove that something didn't crash because of you. Yeah. Well, Dave was the lead investigator on the Manchester fire in the mid-80s. All the changes that happened, increased aisle widths, lighter exits, briefings from cabin crew to all of that came about because of it. And I just found it incredibly humbling to be sat next to a guy who didn't even realise the contribution he'd made. So maybe that's the bit that gets missed out in some of the TV programmes, is the so what bit, what happens as a result.
Yeah.
And I guess it would be very interesting to learn for our people on the show, our viewers. What does a course involve, and do you just train aviation investigators, or is it other sectors as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So actually, Cranfield trained its first aircraft accident investigator in 1977. So I was 5. There was no part of that. But since 2004, we started training rail and marine investigators. And actually, over the last few years, we've trained people from healthcare. So they've all got the same focus, which is a not for blame approach to accident investigation. So in other words, what's the safety lesson, rather than who was the last person to touch the controls or turn a spanner. And when you look at the skills involved, you generally take people who have deep experience of their field and you teach them to be an investigator. And it's really about a mindset rather than anything else. You don't want somebody who wanders in and says, oh, yeah, I know what this is, based on their wealth of experience. You want somebody who's evidence-led, somebody who's patient, somebody who's just prepared to stop and think, work out which of this evidence is going to disappear on you, which of it's vulnerable to being tampered with. And sometimes when you look at a crash site, actually, that isn't where the most interesting bit of the investigation is. That might be sat back in a hangar or in the minutes of a corporate boardroom. It needs somebody who can think quite openly. So getting those skills into people is really the challenge. We actually have a course starting tomorrow. And again, it's a mixture of rail, marine, air, and healthcare investigators. And they can all learn something from each other. And that's part of the privilege of it.
In this world of, in fact, we had an instance of this earlier, didn't we? When we were looking at the Cirrus thing, there's a million experts out there, Graham, now on social media, and we added to that this evening, who've all got their opinion of what happened in that. How do you prepare the investigators to? And you've kind of touched on detaching themselves from that, but it must be really hard when something is, that was global news within seconds, with ADS-B data, there was videos, there was, how do you not prejudge what you think has happened before you turn up?
I think there's two things. One is absolutely being fastidious about everything being based on evidence, and when you analyze something, document how you got there and be prepared to be challenged. So we say to people that peer review has to be whilst you're doing the analysis, not when you've written the report, because then somebody's just going to tell you where your typos are because they're too polite to tell you you've got the whole thing wrong. So it's that, how do you get into people that diversity of perspective is really important. If you think about it, most investigations have a multinational team, multidisciplinary, certainly, formed at short notice, and you've got to find some way through that. So sometimes it's as much about managing not punching somebody in the face as it is about understanding the depths of forensics. In fact, it's often about saying, this is as much as I know. I'm going to talk to an expert, but I'm going to ask the right kind of questions, and we have to teach a lot of that through role play, through simulation. That's a really important part of how we do it, because we often say that none of the individual bits are that hard. What makes it hard is you do it all together. So if you want to talk about the media, you've got to put somebody in front of somebody from the media asking questions at exactly the time you want to get on with doing the investigation over here, or you want a lawyer to look at your report and pull bits out of it, even though you think you've done your best job, because that's what lawyers will ultimately do. So it's about giving people experiences, really.
So Graham, if I was to turn up on the course day one, how long would I expect the training to last? And also, how do you prepare the sort of candidates for the realism of an actual aircraft crash? Because it's all very well thinking, in the classroom and looking at stuff, but to actually turn up to one of these, events, how do you prepare people for that?
So if we're training somebody who might work for a national agency like the Air Accident Investigation Branch, then we generally have them for 6 weeks, but they can actually go on and do a whole master's degree over 3 years. So the first 3 weeks you focus on those fundamental skills of what it takes to be an investigator. We hand hold them onto their first crash site, and then we take them on something that's higher fidelity. So actually, if you're an air accident investigator with us, you might go onto a railway accident, or you might go onto a marine accident like the pictures you saw earlier, because we want people to just be focused on the act of investigating rather than going, it's a Cessna 152, I know all about them. We want people to focus on the evidence. And then in the fifth week, the fourth, fifth, and sixth week, we get very specific to a particular mode, so just air or just rail or whatever. And then there's always a simulated accident. And the picture you saw there was one of them, mid-air collision, wreckage laid across the field, and then various actors. If you want to talk to the air traffic controller, they live in the air traffic control tower, and don't be surprised if they've gone home after experiencing a traumatic event. So we try and run things as close to real time, along with the frustrations that come with all the pieces of the jigsaw not necessarily being delivered in the order that you want them. But that's a really important part of it. So after 6 weeks, we argue that you leave knowing just how little you know, and then you spend the rest of your career hungry to learn every time an investigation comes along, really.
Wow.
And Nick, does your discipline join up with Graham's accident discipline on a regular basis?
Well, I've actually been at one of the actors on it, where I think I was a slightly shady pilot who had, I think, overrun or done something wrong. So I went and I was interviewed by the accident investigators on the course. So I was very well briefed, but it did actually help that I had all the background or the experience, because I could convincingly sound like a pilot and say the right things. So it's perhaps a bit unfair to say actor, but they can. The thing is, the course can draw from all of these people within the campus. They're there, so you can actually get some of the NFLC pilots have done this role. And I've also done the short course version of it. I was on the other side where I was trying to interview another pilot who was acting. So, but it's a really well-run course. As someone who didn't know anything about it before, going in and doing, I think it was a 1 or 2 week course I did. It was really eye-opening. It was very, very impressive.
Yes. And
No,
sorry, go on, Scott.
no, I was just going to say, Graham, you kind of talked about people coming to this having had a career in aviation before, but do you really need that level of experience, or can you just come along and do this 6-week course and then become an investigator of whatever that discipline may be, rail, maritime, or whatever? Or do you have to have that underlying experience before you start the course? Is it kind of a prerequisite or not?
I think there's a couple of ways in. So we get some students who are perhaps at the start of their career who come and do safety and human factors as a master's course, and often they go on to careers which may be in investigation. So particularly skills like human performance or human factors, you can go in perhaps earlier. I think for a role like a flight operations inspector or an engineering inspector, you do need that depth of experience to draw on. So, on occasion, I've told people that we're not going to take their money because they're not going to get a job as an investigator straight after this course. It's better to get that background, and it's important to be honest with people like that. But we have quite a range of people. But yeah, ironically, we tell them to take that experience hat off quite a lot of the time on the course and just say, don't jump to a conclusion based on what you would have done or what normally happens, because what normally happens doesn't look like this. Normally it's not a smouldering pile of wreckage. So you have to suspend some of that. And I think sometimes it's recognizing that some of the very best people get picked to go and become investigators. But our industry survives on not everybody being the very best person. Some of us are the bottom end of being a pilot, or fresh to the job, or low on experience, and it should work. It doesn't.
Distinctly average. Distinctly average is the word you're looking for. I resemble that remark.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because exactly the same is true of trainers, usually instructors. And I think sometimes it's important to be able to be objective about what you're observing, both in the training world and the investigation as well, and B, maybe have experienced a little bit of struggle, particularly in the training world. But definitely, it's in my experience in my other job, it's been important for me to experience the less good part of aviation in order to see the art of the possible. That one might frustrate one, but yeah, really fascinating. Really, really fascinating.
I mean, success is only as good if you understand failure, isn't it? I mean, that's quite an important thing.
Yeah. Well, indeed, there speaks the engineer. I mean, that is the best kind of engineering angle on the whole thing. Now, look, gentlemen, I know we're kind of coming to time. We've been incredibly generous with your time, as all of our guests are. We've got 3 questions that we ask, and we've got to figure out a way of doing this with 2 people. We try and ask everyone the same thing. So I'm going to start. We'll do Graham and then Nick, and then we'll move on to the next question. So looking back at your career so far, what's the highlight? What are you most proud of, Graham?
Good question. It's got to be going to Buckingham Palace, not just once but twice, because we won one of our 6 prizes for the accident investigation activity, and sitting there whilst Her Majesty and His Royal Highness Prince Philip walked into their house with the
the music playing, you know, the tune, and I just had tears streaming down my face. It was just the most amazing moment, and knowing that it was a team that had got us there, and then to do it again last year with the National Flying Lab team, yeah, that'll take some beating.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Nick?
Well, yeah, that's definitely one of them. I mean, Graham was instrumental to getting that application in. So it really was a highlight to me. I'd never been to the Palace before. And that's a team thing as well, having all the team there when we went and got the reward. And there were some students as well there as part of a group. So that was great. I mean, from my own perspective, I still remember my first solo in an aircraft. That'll never leave me. And so, yeah, that's a big moment in my life as well.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay, so my question will start with Graham. What advice would you give your 10-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
So apart from dress better throughout your teenage years, which is obviously a really important one, I would say, you know, do something you're interested in. And when you meet people, be genuinely interested in them, because life is just such a wonderful journey of experiences, the people that you meet. So yeah, do something you love, and then it never feels like working.
Perfect. Nick?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like a philosopher or anything, but you can never be too you can never be too curious, and perhaps sometimes I didn't push my curiosity enough. So yeah, always be curious, always.
And just to be clear, we are talking about engineering here, aren't we?
Yeah. In lots of things. I mean, there's things that I perhaps could have maybe learned a bit more about if I'd been a bit more curious. So I think it drives your passion sometimes. So that's important.
I think so. I've got the last one, which I kind of think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, gents. Graham and Nick, where do you see yourselves in 5 years' time? What is going to be your thing in 5 years' time?
So we have a lab at Cranfield, which has our accident investigation kind of exhibits for learning. So there's a high-speed train coach in there, there's a fishing boat, there's various aircraft in states of disassembly. And it's actually in a cow shed. And it's always slightly awkward to teach people when you can hear a cow giving birth next door. So within 5 years, we will have a dedicated facility where people can come and learn on what I think is the best course in the world.
Wow, I didn't expect that. Nick?
Let's move.
I don't need to deal with cow sheds, but I love research and I love flying, and I just want to do more of that, basically. I mean, if I'm doing more of that in 5 years, I'll be a really happy camper. So that's what gets me going, gets me up. You know, I'll work like mad with that going on. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Wow.
How wonderful.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous, as Mark says, with your time. It has been a real laugh tonight. We've also learned quite a bit, actually, and not just us. In fact, I'm completely ignorant Cranfield Uni even existed. Ironic, as they used to live near Ampthill. And I think that is the case for people who don't work in that sort of industry. I think that Cranfield is largely an unknown entity, and hopefully we've done a little bit this evening to try and promote that and the amazing work that you do there. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's great.
Good night,
Cheers.
everyone. Wow.
They're great, aren't they? Just so enthusiastic.
Cool.
Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So
I felt very underwhelmed with my 4 GCSEs.
Yeah, I don't know what. I felt a little bit sort of thick throughout most of that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think they made it sound so simple, but to be that clever.
Yeah.
That's all I say. To be that clever.
Very
Amazing.
Professors.
It is. It was absolutely amazing, and I will definitely take them up on the offer of doing a live show from the aeroplane if we can sort that out.
We'll have to bring a hip flask, Scott. If there's no
Yeah, so Yeah, so and sandwiches, and bring
Yeah.
our own sandwiches. Yeah. But before we go this evening,
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention very important date today. Today, well, in fact, this evening was the Chastis raid, Op Chastis raid, 617 Squadron Lancasters. 19 took off, 8 failed to return, 53 aircrew died of the 133 that took part. An absolute tragedy. But actually, Barnes-Wallace's invention of the bouncing bomb changed the whole course of the war, didn't it, really? It just couldn't finish the show without just marking and showing our respect, really, for the crews that carried out that raid. It was quite amazing, really. So, Mark.
Yes.
Before we find out what's coming up next week, we know who's not going to be here next week. Lindsay, tell us what.
Well, I've got my first training trip, my first flight next week, so I won't be here. I'll be in Miami, and Scott, from previous shows, the Wi-Fi in Miami, well, I might as well be on the moon.
Yeah.
There's no way.
So
There's no way.
I'm going to leave you two to push the buttons
gonna be
and
on my
hope for the
own.
best.
But it's going to be okay.
We'll be fine. Are you going to be able to cause some mischief in the chat? You could cause some mischief in the chat. Yeah, I think that would be quite cool. Mark, who's coming up next week? You're doing next week. Who is it?
Next week, Nivedita Basin is her name, and she's known as Granny in the Cockpit. She hails from India, and she's got an amazing private and commercial flying career, and she's going to be live from, I think, Delhi.
Yeah, Delhi.
Yeah, she'll be joining us from Delhi, and Lindsay can't even get us from Miami.
Yes.
Disappointing.
So that's
Great to catch up. It is going to be wonderful because I've seen the stuff that Navita has sent us. She has an amazing career. Hoping to see you all next week. Apart from you, Lindsay, missing you already.
Yeah,
I'll be missing you.
Night, Scott.
You'll be on a real over. Bye.
Bye.